never sleep again.
Are you afraid of the things that go bump in the night? Do you feel like a zombie after a long night of tossing and turning? Well, then try Dream from LifeWise. Just one tab daily before bed will leave you feeling rested and refreshed every morning. That's right, Dream from LifeWise. Just one simple tab placed on your tongue, it dissolves and let you drift into dreamland. Text Moose Dream to 754-600-9473 to get you started with your free samples today.
This is a warning to all living mortals. Moose will release 13 of the most terrifying interviews of horror unto the world.
Welcome back, horror fans, to another installment of the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. I'm your host and gift giver, Moose. And today we have an actor, filmmaker, and the latest and probably most human in the long line of Leatherfaces. Please welcome Netflix's Leatherface, Mr. Mark Burnham.
Hello, hello, hello.
And I'll get into it a little bit more later, but when I say the most human, your character definitely has a lot more human characteristics than a lot of the other Leatherfaces before you. You see a more gentler side.
It's in the writing.
Yeah.
It's in the writing, you know?
But before we get to all that, what started you down the road to being an actor? I mean, I know you went to study at the Met and all that, but what was that point in your life where you're like, acting's where I want to be?
Well, I was a poor student in high school. I didn't want to go to college, so eventually I got a relatively good job at an electronics plant in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I was just partying, and I went on for several years like that until I looked around at the halls of the company that I worked for, and I was like, oh my God, I can't be these people that I see walking around here in 40 years. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, it would not be good. So that's, it's a much longer process than this, but that started me thinking, well, what am I going to do then? And given the fact I didn't have a high degree of confidence in my schooling, because I didn't, I graduated with C's and D's, and I was like happy to be done with it.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of that. I'm just saying that's the situation that was.
Sometimes it's all that you can do. I mean, my daughter is on her second run as a senior, and I'm like, look, you don't have to be perfect. Just finish.
Yeah, just show up and
just cross the finish line.
Then you could decide later, which is what I did. So I did 4 years of partying, and then I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And at the time, my stepbrother was here in Hollywood trying to be a stuntman. So I took a week off, and I flew out here and hung out with him and his friends. And at the end of that week, I went home, and I was like, well, I know I don't want to jump off buildings and crash cars, but maybe I could see what it means what you have to do to be an actor. And that's what I did. I went to school I took acting 101 at the local community college. And I never stopped acting after that point. I did several years there before I decided to go to acting school here in Los Angeles, which I went to 2 schools here because the first one didn't ask me back, and I was devastated.
Ouch.
And then I spent a year auditioning, getting nowhere in Hollywood, and I figured I needed to be trained, so I went to another school, and I was the casting king. I was the lead in every play they did for the 2 years I was what they call on casting, the 2 years I was eligible to be in shows. And I played roles a year off Broadway, LA premieres and world premieres. And, so that really kind of like solidified my training.
Well, and it's definitely a confidence booster. I mean, you went from a average-ish student to you're now killing it in the theater world.
Yeah, of course, once I was motivated to study, I became an A student without any problems.
It's just a matter of finding that one thing that drives you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then the problem with acting schools, in my opinion, is wherever, there's a level of competency everywhere. So wherever you go, it's going to teach you 100% of everything you need to know when you get a job, and absolutely nothing about how to get a job.
So that's about school in general. It's like, all right, here's everything you need to know, except this is how you go find and get the job that we just trained you for.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like in acting, it's a big problem because, that causes a lot of people, they don't get, there's not a lot of reinforcement right out of the gate. So to put a framework around that statement, I got out of school in 92. I got lucky in that a student friend, a schoolmate of mine, was dating a commercial agent at the time. And she introduced me, and that guy took me on, and I didn't get a job. I got an acting job on my own auditions that put me into the union, but I didn't get a union job from my agent until 97. That's 4 or 5 years of hearing no. And I feel like acting school doesn't, it kind of shoots people in the foot right out of the gate, because you have to find out how to handle that level of rejection on your own.
Yeah.
You're just kind of left to your own devices. And if you can't hack it, and I say that's kind of a slang phrasing.
Yeah.
I don't mean it that harshly, because it's incredibly difficult. And the drive that it takes to overcome that obstacle, and that's only one obstacle in the actor's journey, it is incredibly difficult to find.
It's a pretty big obstacle. And yeah, you have to develop a pretty thick skin to be like, well, no. Well, okay, is it me? Is it them? What's the... You kind of start questioning, did I just waste all this money and all this time? And were people blowing smoke up my ass telling me I'm good? You start to go into this self-doubt cycle. And so it's kind of a dual obstacle at that point. It's you have to overcome yourself and overcome just being told no.
For sure. And just to put a number on that, like in the first school that I went to, there was 350 kids, and it's a national branded school. So they bring in that amount every semester. And right now there's 3 of us still in town pursuing acting. And so that's 1% of that class was able to get it together. And, a couple of those, actually there's 4 of us, because a couple, like I was in a class with, oh my God, somebody in the Matrix. I can't, I don't want to say, but, so, they run the gamut. We run the gamut. One's a star, the rest of us are just kind of banging it out, trying to be working actors, working job by job by job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we are doing it. We've done it. All of us work pretty regularly. You know, I'm probably the least regular of those group of three, but you know, that's the ratio, 1%
It's crazy.
of that example.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And yeah, but that's how I found acting. I basically stumbled into it on a visit here to LA to my stepbrother, and the only thing that kept me in the game was my own drive to be better and to, you know, make it go right, make it work.
Well, and what I find, and let me frame this out a little bit. Part of why I wanted to know what drove you into acting is because you end up, and now with you know, your high school story and, you know, just stumbling into acting, it's even more interesting that you end up becoming one of like the founding members of the Met Theater Workshop. I mean, we're talking one of like the premier training workshops in the
I mean,
country.
I don't know how much you know about it, but Lucy Liu was in my class, Angie Jolie was in there, a couple other people, guy named Michael Weiss. They used to have a couple of TV shows for a while. He was in there. But the real victory is that everything that I needed to know about so acting school teaches you what you need to know about being adequate in a portrayal. But that particular movie theater, it wasn't a movie theater, I'm sorry. It was a live theater, and it was owned by a group of 15 movie stars, people of varying, you know, levels of career activity, but all of whom were A-list people. And so we started a workshop on Saturdays, of which I'm one of the founding members. And those board members would come in on Saturdays and kind of, you know, tell us, we would show them the scene work that we had been working on, and they would respond to it. And that experience of several years doing that is what gave me the process that I use today. And in fact, it's a longer story, but I was not able to do that process on Texas Chainsaw Massacre because of the COVID protocols. But that experience and the regularity of drilling it in once a week for several years is what got me through Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I couldn't do my normal process. And that's the kind of, I don't know, I want to call it professional, like, you know, I feel like you kind of measure a professional in any discipline, not art, but any discipline. You measure a professional by how they're able to handle problems. And I'm really super proud of Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I couldn't do what I normally do, and it's still, you know, people respond to my performance. So
yeah, you were able to adapt. So yeah, you were able to adapt out of your standard regimen and still pull off an amazing performance. So I mean,
well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's definitely a mark of your adaptability and versatility. So,
I mean, there were times when I didn't know it was going to come off. You know, I didn't think I could do it. You know, it's a very challenging thing. I don't want to skip your questions, so.
Oh no, you're fine. We bounce around. It's all good. Your first like horror role, I would say, at least according to IMDb, was your you got to be the talking vampire Lenny in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, straight up for sure horror genre. I did another movie called Lowlife, which premiered at Fantasia, which Fantasia is the premier horror film festival in the world. But that movie was more like an independent gun movie, but it was horrific, which is why it went to Fantasia. But yeah, straight up horror was Buffy. And I did that job in, I want to say 97.
I say 90. I think you would have done it in 97 because I think the episode aired in 98. So yeah.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Because I mean, you're coming on as, and I know you talked about it in other interviews. At this point, they brought you on as a talking vampire because, which was cool because at this point, the vampires that you see on the show were just basically dressed up extras. They were there to get their asses
they're
kicked.
Stuntmen, yeah. They're stuntmen.
They're there to get their asses kicked.
Right.
They weren't characters. They were, like you said, stuntmen, living props. They were just part of the show. And then here you come, you're a character. I mean, not counting Spike. Spike's, a main character. But
it was a great job, It was a great job to have. Not only, and in my kind of career track, I hadn't been doing TV that long, just a couple of years. So I was, that was the first time I'd ever done prosthetic makeup. It was a very intense prosthetic process. That makeup took 4 hours to get into, including contact lenses and teeth. And it took 2 hours to get out of it when we were done. And it was a pretty intense process, and I was very thankful that I was able to experience it because it really, it gave me a taste for that, for sure.
Well, and it's the one thing I always liked about like Buffy and Angel was their vampire design is very reminiscent of Lost Boys. It had that same like furrowed brow, and it wasn't like an over the top vampire. It wasn't, it was that Lost Boys vampire, which I thought was really cool. And it was very, and to date it now, it's a very 90s vampire, and it was just a really cool look. And you're 6'4". Do you remember about how much you weighed around that time?
Yeah, a lot less than I do now. I was probably 125 or 30 in those days. I mean, 225 or 30.
So yeah, 6'4", about 200 pounds.
That's about that's about 50, 60 pounds less than I do now.
You're still a fucking brick wall, and it's this cool, menacing look. And that's something you get to take with you for the rest of your career. And it comes up again in Chainsaw. And it's just, I don't know. For me, that's just a cool thing to have.
For sure. For sure. There's a thing that happens playing a role in movies. At least it happens to me. And in one movie that I did called Lowlife, what I'm about to describe didn't happen until reshoots after we'd shot. But there's a point, if you're open to it, that the character just kind of like solidifies and gels and comes together. And on Buffy, that happened for me in the fitting, where they put the makeup on me, put me in the clothes, and I'm, standing there looking at myself, and the whole thing just kind of like coalesces into what you ended up seeing in the episode.
Yeah.
When before that, maybe, I could have said the lines and walked the moves and done what they asked me, and it would have been fine. But that's not really playing a character. You know what I mean? Like, playing a character is like breathing it and living it and being that thing. And that character for me on Buffy happened in the fitting. On that movie Low Life, they brought me back for reshoots like several months after, and that's when it came together. And it's just kind of interesting. Like for me and my, I don't know, sensibilities or skills, I guess, I can't force it. I can't look for it. I can't manufacture it and make it happen. I just kind of like have to recognize when it happens and note it down and like, okay, this is the guy. And on I'll tell you exactly when it happened on Leatherface was on my 4th audition tape. You know, on my 4th audition tape, I called my agent and I said, when I left, because now we don't do in-person meetings, right?
Yeah.
On Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I didn't have an in-person meeting for about a month, almost a month, while I was sending in tapes. And when I sent in the last tape, or the second to last tape, I called my agent. I said, hey, I understand what this character is now. So whatever your conversations with them are, like, try to, you know, fit that in, that I am excited and ready and I understand the character and I'm confident that I can, you know, do whatever is needed to be done. Now that statement to my agent happened before COVID, you know, because I got my job 4 days before COVID shut the world down.
Oh,
yeah. So, yeah, they finally, about a couple weeks after I made that call to my agent, I had a meeting with the directors at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, and then I did a test with the producer in his office, and that took up the next 2 weeks after I made that call to my agent. So a couple weeks later was when I got the job for sure, and then the world shut down just 5 days after that. So,
oof.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Right. So I'm glad Low Life is listed as a dark comedy, because the descriptor of the movie has made me laugh.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like the sordid lives of an addict, an ex-con, and a luchador collide when an organ harvesting caper goes very, very wrong. Like, it doesn't sound like the setup for a horror movie. It sounds like a setup for a comedy, right? But it's not. I mean, it is a funny movie, but you're right. It's not.
It's very dark.
It is a dark movie. What was it like on set for that movie?
Well, I don't know that you would know this, but in the 80s and the 90s here in Los Angeles, there was a downtown electronics guy named Crazy Gideon. And Crazy Gideon was what you think he is. Hey, I'm Crazy Gideon. We got TVs and we got this and we got that. So, but Crazy Gideon was no dumbass, right? Like, he took the money that he made on all those electronics, all those kind of cheapy electronics, and he bought buildings that were abandoned in downtown LA and basically rented them out to shoot. So that's where we were, in the basement of this building in downtown LA, when that character came together in Low Life, when I'm sitting there combing my hair in the mirror. And luckily, that shooting wise, because I told you that happened in reshoots after we had done most of the movie, but luckily in the editing of the film, that happens very early in the film. So it's establishing that then, which is good. But it was a lot of fun, you know, we were laughing a lot, and, you know, it was a lot of crazy shit, a lot of weaponry, you know. Luckily, we, you know, I mean, I fire that, I mean, it's semi-automatic, but it's a, you know, I don't remember the designator on the gun that I fired, like what it was, but it was a straight up piece of war material. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was some sort of, you know, semi-automatic that looked very military to me. And nothing ever happened, nobody died, nobody got hurt, was very safe. It was a lot of fun, in that there's a point. I don't even know that it's in the movie, but it's definitely in the trailer. Well, I'm driving that Mazda Miata it's really around the corner, but it seems like a lot more because they strapped the camera to the Miata and I'm just jamming around in that. It was a lot of fun. We were laughing.
How did they put you in a Mazda Miata?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't make the choice either, but they did, and it worked. It's funny.
I've been in a Miata once and never again.
Yeah, just enough time in to drive the route that they wanted me to do.
Like I had that Magilla Gorilla feel about it. Like just open the roof and
For
okay,
sure.
I'll drive it this way.
I think I'm mid chest. The Miata windshield came up to my chest.
It's like it is not a comfortable car for big guys.
It was very funny in the movie.
So, one thing I always do for before I bring a guest on is I'll always Google, like what is so and so best known for, because I'm always curious to what the internet has to say, right?
Yeah.
And so I put in, what is Mark Burnham known for, and your top two hits, obviously Texas Chainsaw, and then Dog, where you were a holding cell prisoner. I'm like, that's...
We'll say it again?
Dog.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, huh.
Very small part.
Yeah.
Very small part. I think...
It's like, that wouldn't have been my pick as, like, number two. And that's why I like doing it, because I'm always curious as to what, like I said, what the internet has to say, and, what people consider, like, in this case, your best, your more popular roles, etc.
Yeah.
So
I think more than Dog, people know me from a movie that I did called Wrong Cops.
Yeah. So that would have been my number two.
Country, but around the world, because of the notoriety of the director, that movie is probably more well known. Not more well known than Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but certainly more than Dog.
Oh, definitely. So let's dive into this. So you get the job, COVID hits. How the hell do you do Texas Chainsaw?
Well, it was difficult. It was difficult to wait because, along with the shutdown of the world, like basically industry kind of communication protocols didn't occur either.
Mm-hmm.
Because those people, whoever they are, they're not in the office. They may or may not be watching their emails. So, there was a long, long period of time where we didn't have any information. Last thing we were told was just to, we're going to push and we'll let you know. And then that's fine for a couple of weeks. But when it goes on to a month and a half or more, you're like, hey, what's the deal? Are we still in? Is the movie not happening now? Like all of those are viable choices, right? They're all possibilities. And we reached out a couple times and they said, no, Mark's still the guy. Just hang tight. We don't know when, but we're going to go.
It's like everything's shut down. We're just all kind of screwed right now. None of us are making money.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, I think all around the world, there was only, once we started in August, there was only Dune, the first Dune remake, and Jurassic Park, whatever. Those movies were finishing up, and us. Those were the only three productions in the whole world that were actually shooting. So
I think a lot has to do with, all three having very open scenery.
Yeah. And I think not the least of which, excuse me, not the least of which would be Legendary involved in two of those, in Dune and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know,
Yeah.
that's probably one of the reasons why it got started so early, you know, because even when we started in August, like there was nobody else shooting for the entire shoot, you know. We were the only ones, basically. I mean, you know, I'm talking about big, legit operations, you know. So, you know, and I had, you know, it happened right in the depths of COVID. So I had 75 of those first generation nasal tests where they jammed it all the way up into your sinuses. I had 75 of those in 90 days, but we never tested positive, the whole production. And that's with the local crew going home to the wife and kids every night, you know? So it's pretty amazing.
That's definitely a amazing statistic. I mean, just with the sheer amount of people that have to come together to put that production on, you'd figure at least one or two would come out positive.
Yeah. Just to get back to what I said about not being able to do my process, that we never tested positive, probably because the protocols that were set up. And the protocols were that each person and each area of shooting was assigned zones. So zone A would be the actors and the people around the camera. That's the people in zone A. And the people in zone B are the people who are a little more removed, like the wardrobe assistants and some of the set people and the dresser and those kind of people who, while they had stuff to do on set, they weren't needed when the camera is rolling. And then zone C was like construction guys who don't need to be there at all. So that probably, you know, saved us. But it was my kind of challenge, because my process would be normally to stand in the background of behind the director and way out of the way and just watch and see what is happening when they're shooting other scenes that I'm not in. But because of the protocol, zone A, I can't be there. If I'm not in front of the camera, I can't be there. I'm considered a zone B or C person. So I couldn't do what I normally do. And it forced me to be much more, I want to say, trusting of the producers and the director in what they were telling me they needed to see. Normally, I would make those decisions on my own and then adjust them in the moment when those people told me to make an adjustment, or not. If they were like, okay, great, that's great, moving on. You know, I'm able to kind of see what's needed and wanted and put that in myself if I can watch what's going on. But when I can't see it, you can't speculate on it.
You can't visualize how it fits the big picture. You can't see how it's all going to mesh together. At this point, it's just a puzzle piece. It's not the puzzle. Yeah. And especially with being in the costume and, you know, it's kind of isolating. And that's a good thing for the character, but a bad thing for shooting. You know what I mean? So I had to just completely trust the producers and the director that whatever they communicated to me, and it also forced my decision-making process to be much quicker. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because those notes, those communications from the director and producer, those are going to be happening while we're shooting. You know what I mean? So they would call cut, look at it, which I couldn't also do. I could not look at what we had just shot. Oof. And then they come to me and say, we need this, this, and this. It forces my choices to be much more snappy.
And couldn't even look at your own performance. That's...
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, You know, I say all that. It caused me a lot of concern, but in the end, it worked out. You
Oh,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like they were able to communicate in a way that I was able to make the adjustments, and you know, more than being adequate, I think people respond to it. At my table at conventions, people really respond to the movie. You know,
Hmm.
they see what I was doing, and you know, some of the notes and stuff were quite jarring. You know, like they came to me 2 weeks in where you'd already shot, and they said, "Mark, you have to make the character sympathetic. How am I going to make a nonverbal, chainsaw killing, wielding maniac sympathetic in my portrayal?" I mean, you know,
Well, and this
that when I say that I didn't know if I could do it, that's what I mean.
talked a lot about Leatherface over the last few months. Um, I've always compared Leatherface to Frankenstein's monster. You know, in
Yes.
that he's not he wasn't made. You know, he was made into this horrific killing machine. You know, but really he's just this essentially frightened soul. And you know, you see it in the 2000s remake with, you know, Andrew Bernarski's take on it, and you see it a lot more with your take on it, where it's you feel more for Leatherface a little bit because you're like, oh, he was pushed to do this. You know, he's not out
Yeah.
there saying, hey, I just want to go out and cut people. He's not Jason. You know, he's not
Right.
Michael Myers. It's There's always an outside factor, and it's usually the family pushing him to go do this, and he's become this basically pointed gun of the family, and it's so sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, luckily, I had already made that decision, which I didn't really share with anybody, you know, because here's the kind of rollout the way it occurred. I get my job, then the world shuts down, you know, and then uh, I had some little communication about playing the role during the shutdown, one of which was we really hired you to match Gunnar Hansen. So what does that mean? That means they want me to portray Gunnar Hansen portraying Leatherface if he was hired to do this movie today. So I did all that research of what I could prior, and coming out of watching all those, and I say all those, I watched the first movie over and over and over. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
watch any other movies. And kind of coming out of that, I had already arrived at the decision that, you know, he was kept, he was forced to do these things. And but for that, as evidenced in our movie, he would not be killing, right? So, like, in the period that starts before our movie begins and ends at the end of the first movie, like all during that time, in my version, you know, I made the decision that he was not killing anybody. He was either on his own, wandering, or he was in the grasp and loving control of the mother in my movie, Mrs. C.
Yeah,
So
he's very much a codependent character, where he has to
yeah,
have somebody taking care of him, and that was also that point was also driven home. And like I said at the beginning, you have, you portrayed the most humanized version of this character, and
it's kind of what I do. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, and with the Frankenstein comparison that I've used, it was just astounding because here you have this guy that is just known for brutality and just gore, which we get, and we get it in the movie, and we'll touch on that shortly. But there's also that other side where he's this like almost victim of long time mental abuse, and it's so kind of watching him recoil from that a little bit, and seeing the human side is just it adds a different depth to this character that we've seen for years at this point, and it's a nice new breath into the character. And honestly, that was my favorite part of the movie, was how humanized Leatherface came across.
Well, thank you for noticing, man, because it was deliberate, and I'm most proud of the movie coming together the way it did with COVID and everything, to be able to arrive at that thing where you saw what I was planning back in 2020 when we were there in the sunflower field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because you never really know. Like, I could be, trusting the producers and the directors. They could be making their most professional, well-balanced decisions, and it just doesn't play. That's always a truth and a reality, a real possibility. And so the fact that so many people, and you, of course, so many people see it and respond to it, like I get a lot of this, I know people, this is a quote, I know people, there was a lot of hate for the movie, like this, that, and the other thing. I mean, that may be true, but it's not true now. Like, you know what I mean? The movie, it's still on the front page of Netflix horror after 2.5 years. I mean, what other benchmark is there other than that? You know what I mean? Because what does that mean? That means somebody's watching it.
Right.
Somebody's watching it multiple times and telling their friends about it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, to me, if you look at Netflix, that's like a hit run in the theaters on Netflix, as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean?
I said Netflix has managed to merge theaters and what HBO was in the 90s.
I'm super proud of it.
Yeah. They've taken like the top two platforms for content and merged them together. And, to the point of, there was a lot of heat on the movie. I think ultimately it was a lot of like knee-jerk reactions to the movie. And there's still an impression in the world, and I don't know why this is really, but because it isn't the case anymore, but there's still an impression in the world that if something plays directly to Netflix, it must suck. Mm-hmm. There's that kind of correlation to direct to video that is completely false and has nothing to do with anything in reality, but there is that impression in the world. And those that saw that our movie was going to be on Netflix before it dropped and made that determination, there was no sway in them. They already made up their mind.
And that's fine. But the thing that they're not really taking into consideration is COVID. There was nobody going to the theaters in 2021. The only reason this went straight to Netflix is because of that. Right? Yeah. Nobody was going to the theaters in fall of 21. So what are they going to do with this horror movie that they love, that they know is good? They can't put it in the theater. They have to make it They have to make the deal with Netflix. And I think that was the best deal they could make at that time.
Well, and now you look, Netflix is making moves with like, A-list celebrities and cranking out movies on the regular as basically their
For
own,
sure.
movie house. So, I mean, it kind of puts you guys in this weird time window. You were in essentially the tester window for only on Netflix movie
Yeah.
with big budget cast, big budget production, and yeah, people still had that like direct to video, straight straight to TV release feel to it.
Yeah.
But then fast forward just 2 years, and it's regular, it's commonplace, and it's accepted. People love it. So I think a lot of the heat comes from just not being able to accept the changing dynamic of where our content is coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean,
how it's delivered.
Yeah. And a lot of it is, you look at how much it costs to go to the movies these days, where, unless you're going at like the middle of the day, 2 people go to the movies, it's like $40. Netflix you can get for what, $15 a month?
Yeah.
Give me a movie on Netflix any day, please.
Yeah.
And
here in big metropolitan places, it's more because you gotta, most places you're gonna have to pay for parking, so I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen in our business. I don't know if this model is going to, because the A-list movies are still playing, like, look at Gladiator 2 and Alien, Romulus, those movies went straight to the theaters, and rightly so. They deserved it. You know what I mean? So I don't know if streaming is going to dominate or if it's going to be a kind of companion.
So I think it'd be a good companion to where, a lot of the, like, the Star Wars, the Aliens, like the franchises can go to theaters and sell out the movie houses and, make the buku bucks that they're going to make. There's no way around that. But then everybody else could just go to streaming, still make a killing on the back end, and everybody wins.
Yeah.
It's a good day for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
What was your favorite kill in Texas Chainsaw?
Yeah, so excuse me, I get into the filmmaking aspects of it. So, and there was very little CGI in our movie, if any. Like, most everything was practical effects. So when I break that guy's forearm and stab him in the throat with it, there's a guy, the other actor, who's he's tucked his arm behind his back, and I'm breaking a foam thing and stabbing it in his mouth, in his neck, and somebody else is like squirting the blood somewhere. That's what I get into. And I get into not because of the blood or anything else. It's the challenge of taking all those separate elements and making it look seamless for the camera so that it looks real. That's what turns me on. So really, I don't have any favorite kill. They're all incredibly amazing in each of their own kind of attributes, right? So Sally, when I kill Sally, I'm holding a half blade saw. She's wearing a shark fin on the back of her shirt. So the camera sees the blade go through her and out the back. And then there's 3 guys standing off to the side, so that when I go like that, she goes flying across the street. And that's what I get into. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not just it's like when I say that's what I get into, I also mean the pressure, because you have to get it like, preferably you get it right the first time.
Yeah, there's not a
You
lot
know
of
what I
wiggle
mean?
room with practical effects as much as there is with CGI, because you can just go in and edit it a couple times. But with
No,
practical,
man.
you're very limited, and
And
you start
and
messing
that
it up too many
pressure,
times.
like,
That costs money.
I get into it. I get into it like, okay, the pressure's on. We got to do it, everything exactly perfect, so that the camera, can see it, and the editing guy can just put it in without any kind of overly involved
Yeah.
doing stuff of him. So all of them, the chick going out the window in the bus, cutting her in half, doing the lovers who are kissing, like, all of that stuff was amazing filmmaking wise, and incredibly difficult to do it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, all of it. The end, like yanking her out of the car and cutting her head off in one move. Like, just that little bit wasn't, difficult. It involves me doing everything right on my side, her doing everything right and getting out of the car and not hurting herself, or me hurting her, or the car running over. Like, so much shit can go wrong. And all of it, like, preferably has to be done right the first time. And that's that pressure and that intricacy, and maybe don't hold your hand here, you maybe hold it here. You know what I mean? Like, that little difference can mean a lot sometimes to the camera. So those are the things that I get into. The other thing I want to say about the kills is they're Fede Alvarez, man. He's a fucking genius.
Yeah.
Straight up. I don't care what you think of Evil Dead. I don't care what you think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't care what you think of Alien Romulus. Sam Raimi and Ridley Scott are billion-dollar filmmakers. Kim Hinkle and Pat Cassidy and the guys that are Exerbia, who own Texas Chainsaw Massacre, those guys have $200 million franchise. These people aren't just going to say, oh, Joe Blow can make our movie. Fede Alvarez is a straight up genius. And those things, the bus, the stabbing of the deputy, cutting the chick in half, all of those, that's Fede Alvarez's stamp on that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a straight up, I said it, he's a straight up genius.
Oh, yeah.
Don't breathe. So Don't Breathe, okay? Don't Breathe made its $15 million budget back in like 13, 14 hours in the movie theater, and went on to make $80 million in the theaters in 2016. Like, that kind of entree, man, you people notice.
Yeah.
Right? People notice. And the billion-dollar filmmakers are the guys that notice.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what makes a successful movie is you surround yourself with the right people for the job. So whether it's, and a lot of times people think it's just the right actors. It's not. It's the right actors, the right writers, the right special effects, the right, you have to have the right people in every position to make that movie. And
for sure.
If you don't, I mean, you could have all the right actors, but if the writing sucks, if the production sucks, guess what? The movie's going to suck. Yeah. It's just how it is.
That's why these people they're like, oh, AI, we can do a whole movie now with AI. Oh, great. Can you make somebody go pay for it? Because without that, until you can do that, it doesn't mean shit.
So you figure that out. Right? You let me know.
Anyway, I didn't mean to get all excited there. You get me talking about Fede Alvarez.
Oh, no, No, I love it. I love when real emotion comes through, and it's, not the, I don't want to say like when a guest gets stuck on autopilot, but like basically when you were telling the same, when someone tells the same stories over and over again, you can kind of tell when they're like, okay, I've been asked this, et cetera, et cetera. But no, I really do like when someone's on and they get that emotion and they get to the point where like, oh yeah, this is exciting. Let's go.
Yeah.
I will say, as far as scenes in the movie goes, I think my favorite is there's a scene on the bus. The guy's there with his cell phone, and he looks at you and he's like, you're gonna get canceled, bro, and you just, bam, and it has nothing to do with the kill. It's just you want to do that to everybody who says that, and to finally watch it play out on TV was fucking amazing. So thank you. And like I know you were just kind of put in that position, but you got to live out my dream. Thank you.
I don't know if you know this or not, but if you pause it, when he says that, do anything and you're canceled, bro. By the way, that's one of the producers of the movie. His name is Shin Simosawa. He's a good guy. He's a great guy. The camera turns around on me, and that's when I start the movie. And then the camera goes down and it's showing his phone. And if you pause it, you can see that people are commenting, like he's live Facebooking or whatever, and people are commenting. And one of the people that's commenting is an account with the name David Blue Garcia, who is the director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And his comment is, "Who hired this clown?" There's a little Easter egg for you if you didn't know.
So before we wrap this up, if say your agent called you tomorrow and said, "Hey, you're given the opportunity. You can pick any role you want," what would it be?
Well, I'll tell you two things. First of all, and I don't know what they're planning. I don't have any information or anything. But if that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre for another Leatherface, I would go. I would say absolutely yes. And also, I just saw the other day that Legendary has a comic book version, like not a version, but they have an arm of their company that does comic books. And they're going to put out a graphic novel of Frankenstein. And I would love to play Frankenstein in a movie. I think, that's the one. I would love to play any of the uni monsters, pretty much. Not necessarily Invisible Man or Wolfman, but like, the biggies for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want Invisible Man on my resume. It's like, look, I'm on screen. I promise I'm there.
Although I have to say, the most recent one with Elizabeth Moss, I thought was a great suspenseful story.
Oh, absolutely. So where can listeners keep up to date with you and everything you're doing?
I promo everything that I do on Facebook and Instagram. My Instagram is Take2LA, but if you just search my name, Mark Burnham, you'll see me. I got a beard and a black eye in the picture. And on Facebook, I'm Mark Burnham. So everything I do goes there. I mean, I'm on Slasher and Threads and Blue Sky, but I don't know how to use those things to their fullest extent right now.
Neither.
So mostly I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
And I will put those links in the episode description, and you can find me and other great podcasters over at electronicmediacollective.com. Or if you just want to follow me, follow Moose's Monster Mash on Facebook or Moose Media Inc. on YouTube. And Mark, this was a blast.
Well, I agree, Moose. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you reaching out.
I already have a couple ideas in my head on what I would like to do to have you back on sometime, and we'll get to those later. But
I'm always auditioning. Hopefully we got something to talk about.
But yeah, thank you again for coming on, listeners. come back tomorrow for another episode of the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. And until then, mash on.
Peace out. Thank you.
This has been Moose's Monster Mash. Come back for more chills and thrills if you dare.